sea mists veiled the shoreline beneath Casterly Rock like a silvery scarf, and Tyrion Lannister watched the waves slither back into the sunset-dappled surf, as though the ocean itself paid homage to the golden lion perched above it. Salt stung the fresh stitches running along his jawline, gifts from the ghastly morning after the wildfire's green holocaust on the Blackwater. And for once he found the tang of pain comforting. Pain was honest. It asked no favor, made no promise, and required no courtesy. A man knew where he stood with pain, which was more than could be said for the small council that had shrunk him to nothing, and for his lord father who had dragged him home like a truant child. Oh no. A soft snort escaped his lip. Casterly Rock had never seen him as its son, only as a stunted ledger entry whose cost must be balanced, or buried. Yet as his litter creaked uphill, the stone leviathan appeared different. Older, yes, but also expectant, as if great halls and hoary galleries remembered a forgotten vow, and whispered it through the bones of the rock. Even land smugglers' tunnels, long choked with dust and sagging props, seemed to breathe in time with the tide. The sensation prickled the dwarf's scalp. "Duh," he muttered nonsense to himself. An old habit, whenever the weight of destiny prowled too near. Dragons dreamed themselves into the world again in the east. Plague-green sorcery had bathed King's Landing in fire, and now the lion's den itself hummed with secrets. 7 hells. Perhaps the gods had taken a morbid interest in Lannisters at play. Inside the rock, dusk appeared to linger, loath to surrender even to torchlight. Courts of carved lions reared overhead, mute jurors to countless treasons of yesteryear. The honeyed nostalgia his siblings embraced held no purchase here. Tyrion felt only the cold iron bite of memory, nurses clucking in pity, stable boys snickering, father's long shadow following every misstep. He angled his bruised face away from the sharp regard of guards and stewards, for when men beheld a Lannister maimed by his own king, they smelled weakness the way hounds scented blood. But that night, as the household supped above, and the lowliest drudges prepared pallets in lower galleries, Tyrion prowled alone, a lamp in his good hand and a wineskin in the crook of his maimed arm. He had chosen the mining shafts. Their twisting ribs nested deep behind the ancient veins, long since leached of gold. Miners' pick marks still fretted the stone, but damp had reclaimed the passages. Lichen and black moss furred the walls, and water whispered in cracks like dusty ghosts. A more prudent man would have tarried in chambers bright with bronze braziers, yet prudence had never been his muse. In the rock's guts lay stories the maesters never penned, and Tyrion intended to hear one before sunrise, if only to drown the silence father forced upon him. After an hour's wandering, he paused at a fork where a wooden sign leaned, its lettering half flicked away. Left, it once read, with a second line lost to rot beneath. He angled his lamp. A half-erased etching of an 8-pointed sunburst burned faintly in the grain. No lion rampant, but Valyrian glyphwork. That alone seized his breath. Tywin boasted that no Lannister had ever bent the knee to dragonlords, but Casterly Rock had traded ore with Valyria in the Age of Heroes. Crumbling ledgers confirmed it. So what? Whispered common sense. The old empire's traders walked half the world. But his wine-warmed mind insisted the sign's placement. The sunburst hidden in miners' corridors hinted at something left unsaid. He chose the left-hand tunnel. The air cooled appreciably, carrying a metallic tang older than iron. Far below, unseen water boomed and faded like the bellows of a slumbering giant. Every dozen paces a supporting beam sagged, and twice he ducked cascades of broken shale. When the lamp sputtered, he sucked air through his teeth, but the flame rallied, spitting amber motes that scurried into blackness. And then he nearly stepped into the abyss, an excavation pit yawning 20 feet wide. His lamp's glow revealed a makeshift descent. A rope ladder rotten beyond trust, dangling toward unseen depths. On the lip, a rust-clogged winch lay toppled, its cable snapped. Tyrion knelt. Moist air sluiced up the shaft, billowing his cloak. Bringing the lamp close, he saw gemstone glints far below. Not gold but crystal scales of pyrite and quartz, their sheen reminiscent of... His heart hammered. He dropped a pebble and counted until a splash answered. Not bottomless then. He licked dry lips, tasted dust and excitement. Curiosity might birth more scars, but the world rarely spared fools or dwarfs. One must carve glory from unkind rock, as his forebears had carved a kingdom. That thought felt strangely apt. He retraced steps to a storage alcove he had passed and commandeered a coil of fresh rope, no doubt stock for repairs. Fastening one end to a sturdy stanchion, he tested its bite. A short drop and a sudden stop, he mused, recalling an old sellsword jest, but his hands never trembled. He began his descent hand over hand, lamp clamped between teeth, letting the rope slide until boots splashed mid-calf in frigid black water. The chamber stretched beyond the lamplight's timid sphere, a cathedral wrought by patient picks and the whim of earth. Silt rose in swirling ghosts around his legs as he trudged toward a faint shoreline of rubble. When lamp flame finally kissed dry stone, it revealed an alcove ribbed by man-fashioned buttresses. Something glittered between them. Smooth, oval, mottled surfaces reflecting red and gold like candlefinch's wings. Eggs. 3 of them, each the size of a mastiff's skull. They crouched in a broken nest of hammered flat iron, caked with mineral accretions. Tyrion's breath left him in a shudder. Dragon eggs were myth, currency of liars and alchemists, yet here they slept mere yards beneath his cradle. The surface of the nearest bore ripples of deepest burgundy, fissured by shimmering gold, as though veins of Lannister wealth beat beneath its shell. He extended shaking fingers and felt warm. Not the residual heat of stone, but a living pulse, faint yet undeniable. A laugh burst free, half wonder, half terror. I think, Father, you may have overlooked a source of leverage more precious than all your minted lions. The cavern swallowed his words in echoing ripples. Tywin had once hissed that Tyrion's birth had slain their mother, and cursed their bloodline. Tyrion wondered now what curses might hatch from these jewels. He visualized the lion standard flanked by dragon's wings and nearly choked with manic glee. One step closer, and a tremor quaked through the earthen floor, soft as a cat's tread yet vast in resonance. He froze. The eggs glimmered, and the air grew perceptibly warmer, as though some unseen forge had roused. Somewhere overhead, rock cracked. Dust snowed. The lamplight waved like a frightened child. But the tremor subsided. His racing heart slowed. Easy. He muttered to the eggs, to himself, to fate. He considered logistics. 3 eggs could not be swaddled in pockets. Nor would he risk servants' eyes. Perhaps a wheelhouse lined with coal braziers, masquerading as an alchemist's folly. A raven to Jaime? No. The King's Guard remained shackled in King's Landing. Cersei would only poison the shells. Varys. The eunuch's smile concealed too many teeth. Tyrion touched the nearest shell again. It thrummed like a distant bell tower as though sensing him, measuring him. And he felt, absurdly, measured and not found wanting. It took hours to haul each egg to the rope, fashion crude slings, and winch them topside. Each ascent shredded new stitches along his arm, but hurt dulled beneath the tidal rush of exhilaration. Near dawn he emerged into an unused wine cellar tucked below the scullery, a place he had once hidden from a whipping. The irony pleased him. Wrapped in musty quilts scrounged from moldy racks, the eggs appeared mundane, merely casks. He slid barrels to disguise the fiendish hoard, then climbed stealthily to his chambers. There, candles guttered low beside crisp parchments bearing father's seal, summons to council, commands for tribute, threats disguised as paternal admonition. Tyrion brushed them aside and crouched before the hearth. A fire still crackled. He chose the burgundy and gold shell, the smallest, and nestled it near glowing embers. As light drenched its curves, the shell's pattern swirled faintly, no trick of eye. Tiny motes leapt from log to shell, fizzled, and smoked. A hiss no louder than a kitten's sigh rose. Tyrion's skin prickled. He whispered a half-forgotten lullaby. A Casterly nurse's tune about lions keeping watch over moon-kissed cubs, and fell asleep slumped against the hearth, one hand splayed across warm scales. In dreams he strode down molten veins of the rock, each step ringing underfoot like struck silver. Ahead, dragons coiled through caverns vast as skies, their scales hammered from lion gold, their eyes twin rubies. They bared great fanged smiles, and one bent its massive neck, so that enormous nostrils met his face. "Rise," it commanded in a voice deeper than any bell. "Rise, little lion, and learn what debt stone owes to flame." He woke at noon to the scent of citrus and cinnamon. Shai's perfume. She leaned beside his bed, hair tumbling over one bare shoulder. The small folk called her field of fire those curls. "You missed breakfast and council both," she murmured. "Your father prowls." Her gaze drifted to the hearth where the quilted form lay. "What toy have you smuggled now?" "Treasure." He stretched, wincing. "Enough to burn every ledger and blot every debt the lionkin ever owed the crown." Shai's eyes narrowed with amused suspicion. "Does it juggle, or spit wildfire?" "Something more ancient." He beckoned her close, checked the door, then drew back the quilt. She gasped at the sheen. "A fossil," she whispered. "Alive." He pressed her hand to the shell. Shai jerked as if pricked, then smiled wide at the gentle heat. Wonder chased wariness from her brown eyes. They were both, suddenly, conspirators. "Where did you find it?" "Where Lan the Clever stole his first bride. In darkness." Tyrion rose, pacing. "3 of them. Gods be good, Shai, do you understand? The east trembles because one silver girl hatched 3 doined. Suppose the rock bears its own flight? House Lannister could end this wretched war in a roar, instead of a whimper." "Damn?" Her grin faded. "Wars kill small folk too." But dragons decide who buries whom." He caught himself, gentled his tone. "Forgive me. The realm thrashes like a hooked trout. Peaceful thoughts drown easily. Yet, think, if dragons answered to me, I could leash the slaughter. Force peace at sword point without starving the riverlands further." Even as he said it, he tasted naive self-deceit, but he would embrace any fancy that placed power in his crippled hands. The chamber door flew wide. A guard in crimson cloak bowed stiffly, averting eyes from Shai's half-dressed form. "My lord, His Grace your father commands your presence in the solar. At once, Tao." The man's gaze flicked to the hearth. He marked the quilted bundle but said nothing. Tyrion dismissed him, heart hammering. "Shai, hide it, if father finds." He left the sentence unfinished. Tywin's contempt could not be hidden behind plate armor. The old lion would seize the eggs, trumpet their discovery, and crown himself dragon master before Tyrion finished a goblet of wine. He donned doublet and crimson cloak, plastered a wry smile over nerves, and set out. Corridors thrummed with morning duties, but he sweated through chill drafts like a condemned man. Tywin waited in a solar-lined floor, to rafter with ledgers. Cersei lounged by the window, Jaime absent. Ravens cawed beyond open shutters. Tywin's gaze flicked to Tyrion's rumpled hair and stained sleeve. Drinking again before noon. Father began without greeting. "Only life, which is heady." Tyrion poured himself wine and did not drink. His breezy tone concealed taut muscles. "A raven from King's Landing." Tywin punctured the air with a parchment. "Lord Baelish corners the Tyrells. The Starks muster at River Run. The Sellsword Paragon Daenerys Targaryen sails from Astapor with Unsullied in her wake. Dragons grow large enough to blacken moons, if rumors speak true. Rumors rarely pay their debts." Tyrion traced the rim of his cup. "They encourage fools to gamble," Tywin snapped. "Which leads us to you. You will ride east at once and purchase the sellsword captains of Volantis. Gold flows again, thanks to your cousin Devan reopening 2 veins. Spend it. Now. Ride east? Away from the eggs. I fear ships and sellsword captains both. A man of my stature fares poorly on tilting decks. Doubly so in my solar," Cersei crooned. Tywin ignored the jibe. "You will go. Ser Adam will accompany you." Tyrion measured his father's face. Tywin smelled opportunity in Essos, but he smelled something else on Tyrion. Defiance. That could not stand. Very well. He bowed. As you wish. Inside he pictured the eggs cooling untended, perhaps dying. The thought cut deeper than wildfire's green bite. That night, he huddled with Shae by guttering candles, sketching schemes. I cannot sail, he hissed. Not while dragons sleep below my feet. She fetched parchment and quill. Together they contrived diversions. Faked fever, forged summons from the hand, even poisoning himself lightly with basilisk blood to claim seasickness. Each plan withered under scrutiny. Tywin anticipated his excuses like a chess player glimpsing every future move. As pre-dawn gloom smothered the taper's last glow, Shae brushed his cheek. Sometimes you hide by standing tall. Go east as he commands. Ship the eggs with your entourage disguised as cargo. Coal, quartz, what have you. In Volantis no Lannister spy will know them, and you will have time to hatch them. Then thou. He seized her hands, kissed her knuckles. Brilliant. But the beasts may require warmth no ship's hold can offer. Hire a Braavosi glassblower to fashion a furnace. Claim you crave hot baths. Her laugh was a breeze in the choking night. And so new plans unfurled. Tyrion summoned a tanner, ordered 3 elaborate trunks lined with felt and hidden braziers. He hired 4 mute stonemasons discharged after a tunnel collapse, loyal by coin, and bound them to silence. Under cover of night, they winched each egg from the cellar, lugged them to a hidden carriage, and smothered them in warm sand drawn from furnaces meant for smelting. When at last the trunk stood locked in the yard, Tyrion sagged in relief, and the burgundy and gold shell fluttered with an audible crack. All froze. A hairline fissure webbed the apex, glimmering ember red within. Tyrion swore softly, cradling the trunk's lid. Easy, little lion. The following dawn the convoy rolled out. 1 stout carriage for Tyrion, another for trunks and servants, guards fore and aft. Shae tucked among retinue as washerwoman. They wound along the gold road toward Lannisport, where a hired cog, the Golden Bow, awaited. Tywin watched from battlements, armor ablaze with sunrise. His stare pinned Tyrion like a lance. Within that stare the dwarf perceived suspicion. Had father sniffed secrets? But nothing in Tywin's manner betrayed knowledge of dragonflame, stirring beneath polished cedar lids. The sea voyage began fair. Gulls wheeled overhead, and the Golden Bow knifed through blue-green swells. Tyrion paced the hold, checking each brazier and stoking coals. He dreamed waking dreams. 3 dragons aloft above the Blackwater, casting Casterly lions in flame. They would call him Dragonlord. The imp no more. Jaime would laugh in delight. Cersei would choke on envy. Father might soften in admiration, or cower. That last image he savored like a rare arbor gold. But on the 5th night, a squall clawed from the west. Waves battered, masts shrieked, and the cog pitched violently. In the hold, sand sloshed free. Tyrion dragged himself between trunks, nails peeling as he clutched rope and barrel. Beneath rattling planks he heard muffled groans. Not timber but living things straining to be born. Lightning peeled the sky. Thunder rattled braziers. A hatchway beam snapped, crushing a sailor. Water surged knee-deep. And from within the burgundy and gold egg burst a wail. High and unearthly. The shell split, shards tumbling over glowing coals. A serpentine limb clawed air. Sooty membranous wing unfurling. Then nostrils flared, and molten breath spilled across wet sand, hissing steam. Tyrion forgot fear, forgot drowning. He knelt, arms outstretched as the hatchling crawled onto his sleeve. Its scales shimmered dusk red tipped with gold, eyes molten copper. It hissed once, perhaps greeting, perhaps hunger. Tyrion laughed, tears mingling with seawater. I name you Shyfeather, he murmured, recalling dream rubies. The dragon snapped weak jaws, then curled upon his shoulder, claws pricking flesh lovingly. Somewhere above, sailors screamed as the storm cracked the mainmast. But in Tyrion's world only 2 hearts beat, his and the tiny furnace dancing upon him. Dawn found the golden bow, a crippled silhouette limping into the disputed waters off Lys. Sails hung in tatters, crew bloodied. But Tyrion strode the deck exultant, a scarlet cloak hiding the coiled hatchling at his nape. Shays gasped upon seeing the creature dissolved into delighted laughter. "A lion with wings," he whispered. "And fire," he corrected. That fire soon proved literal when a corsair galley closed aft, black sails billowing. Tyrion's guards readied bows, but the golden bow's arms were scant. "Sunspear's fury," proclaimed the enemy prow. The corsairs loosed a warning volley. Arrows fell like lethal hail. One buried in Tyrion's calf. He scarcely felt it. He strode to stern rail, ignoring sailors' shouts. He unclasped his cloak. Shyfeather spread itany wings, not yet the size of sparrow pinions, but rage burned in copper eyes. Tyrion pointed. There. The hatchling leapt. Off a flame spurted, and fizzled, barely a candle flame, but it struck an arrow mid-flight, incinerating shaft and fletching. On the enemy deck laughter rose, until they glimpsed the creature wheeling above mast. Fear stilled mocking tongues. Tyrion grinned despite pain. He fetched a jar of lamp oil, smashed it upon deck, then coaxed Shyfeather to breathe again. The dragon's second gout flared brighter, catching oil. Fire licked up rigging. Panic replaced bravado. The corsair veered off, oars flailing. The golden bow limped free, while Tyrion bound his bleeding leg. Wonder drunker than any wine. Yet dangers multiplied. On Lys, they afloated to refit, and rumors buzzed. A dwarf magister with a pet dragon, 3 trunks heavy as sin, braziers glowing day and night. By the time the ship recrossed to Volantis, whispers outtraced them, whispers of unclaimed eggs, of Lannister gold forging fire. Slave soldiers stared with wide eyes as Tyrion hobbled along the black wall toward inns. Spies tailed him. He bribed or misled them, but networks burgeoned faster than coins flowed. He wrote cautious letters to Varys, offering knowledge in exchange for silence, uncertain whether the spider could be bought. In a rented manse overlooking the Rhoyne Delta, he tended Shyfeather, now thrice its hatch size, while the other eggs steamed in heated pits. The green and silver shell cracked first. A female he named Mistmaw. The third, molten black, veined with crimson, proved stubborn. He stoked extra furnaces and sang Valyrian hymns he recalled from Maester Pycel's dusty scrolls. On the 7th week, as night markets chanted and Volantis glittered, the black shell burst beneath a blood moon. The last dragon spilled into sand keening like morning steel. Its scales glistened obsidian. He named it Shadowmane. 3 dragons to a dwarf. The notion amused him. More, it terrified him. Dragons grew hungry fast, their appetites dwarfing supply lines. Oxen were driven into courtyard pits, and each feeding seared the night with screams from beasts and drovers alike. Slaves whispered prayers. Rumors morphed into legend. Volantene triarchs petitioned quietly for audiences, some seeking alliances, others to plunder or kill. The faceless men sent warnings cloaked as riddles. Somewhere across the narrow sea, Daenerys Targaryen would surely learn of Lannister dragons and weigh response. Tyrion penned missives to King's Landing, couching truths in riddles, but withheld mention of Shyfeather's first flight along the Black Wall at twilight, or Mistmaw's playful torching of a slave trader's galley, or Shadowmane's habit of vanishing by day only to return reeking of charred jungle beasts. These things were for him alone, and for Shae, who served as clandestine keeper, though fear shadowed her smile more each dawn. The little lions grew, and with their growth came strategy. Tyrion purchased a dozen Valyrian bronze collars rumored to bear sigils binding dragons to mortal voice. Whether myth or not, he dared chance no rival. Weeks of coaxing and goat blood baptisms won the collars clasped around serpentine necks. He alone spoke the command words, and though the beasts sometimes balked, scorching door frames in protest, he sensed a tenuous accord, respect perhaps from predator to cunning prey. Then the raven arrived, white wings mottled with red, Tywin's seal like a bloody fingerprint. The parchment within commanded Tyrion to return at once. Lord Tywin heard tell of curiosities in Volantis, and as hand of the king he wished to appraise them personally. The letter reeked of threat. If Tyrion dared stay, his father would brand him recreant and attaint his line. If he obeyed, dragons would fly under the rock. Tywin's rock. He paced hallways until dawn, torn between dread and defiance. Even Shae could offer no balm. At sunrise he stood upon the manse balcony, watching Shadowmane circle high above. Dreams of dwarf-made dynasty writhed like snakes. Dragons were power, but power unsheathed too early could kill its wielder. He must decide, bow and risk Tywin's theft or war against his own blood with beasts yet half-grown. He poured wine, drained it, and grimaced. A lion with wings may soar, he murmured, but if he strays too near the pride's king, he may lose them. A shriek tore the sky. Shyfeather dived, clutching a black-scaled corpse. A child's body. Tyrion's heart stalled. The dragon dropped the grisly bundle on the quay wall before Misma swooped to claim it. Slaves screamed. Guards loosed quarrels. One grazed Shyfeather's wing. The dragon retaliated with a blast, igniting tar-sealed crates. Inferno roared. Within moments, half the quay burned. Tyrion's horror mingled with cold understanding. Dragons unfed turned feral. And any city would answer fire with blades. Volantis erupted. Bells clanged. Triarch guards surged toward the manse. Tyrion sprinted inside, shouting Valyrian commands. Shadowmane arrowed from the sky, tail smashing crenellations, jaws disgorging flame in luminous torrents that incinerated attackers. Yet attackers multiplied. Polearms tipped with scorpion venom harpoons, nets spiked with obsidian shards. Tyrion vaulted debris, calling for Shae. He found her in courtyard, eyes wide, hair matted with soot, clutching a dagger. They met without words. He pulled her toward the stables where servants saddled horses in frenzy. Through the smoke, he glimpsed Shyfeather pinwheeling above the black wall, blood streaking wing membranes. Misma shrieked, somewhere unseen. Shadowmane roared defiance that shook roof tiles free. Venturing into city streets meant death. He recalled old tunnels. Sewers emptying beneath the Rhoyne. He shoved Shae toward them. Slaves followed, trusting coin and promise. Chaos favored flight. Behind them the manse burned, dragon silhouettes weaving in hellish glow. Tyrion spared a glance skyward, and saw Shadowmane lifting Mistma's limp body in talons, arrow shafts bristling her neck. Shyfeather swooped, keening, as Shadowmane bore the carcass beyond walls toward swamps. Tyrion's cry knifed his throat. But there was no time. Guards stormed lanes. He fled through sewer grates as smoke blotted heaven. Night swallowed them. In fetid tunnels he clutched Shae, tremors racking his limbs. One dragon dead. Another wounded. War with Volantis begun, and Tywin's summons unanswered. Every choice bled. He laughed. Ragged, animal. So ends the golden dream. Yet from the darkness, a glow blossomed. Copper and flame. Shyfeather alighted beside him, wing tattered, but eyes ablaze. The dragon bowed its head, so that Tyrion's hand rested upon warm brow. He choked a sob. Shae laid a hand upon his shoulder. Around them refugees stared in awe, peril for a moment forgotten. Tyrion rose, cheeks wet, resolve forging anew in sorrow's furnace. Misma's death would echo. Volantis would brand him kinslayer of civilization. But with Shyfeather, and God's willing, Shadowmane alive, his cause still breathed. Blood debt-bound dragon and dwarf tighter. He would not crawl back to Tywin. He would seize what fate offered, fire and flight. He spoke softly to the survivors, ragged slaves, sellswords without pay, small folk robbed by Triarch taxes. "Come with me," he said, voice steadied by fury. "The old orders rot, but in the west stands a rock that remembers dragons. Serve me, and we will claim a world where no tyrant, Lannister or Triarch, bleeds you again." They listened, torn between fear and hope. Shyfeather's flame flickered overhead, painting their faces in amber conviction. By torch glow they trekked through sewer until it washed into the moonlit Rhoyne, There, half-sunken barges languished. Tyrion commandeered one, patched its leaks, lashed barrels for buoyancy, and ushered his ragged legion aboard. Shyfeather perched upon mast, wings spread like crimson sails. They pulled quietly downstream, stars wheeling above. Ahead lay ruin, vengeance, perhaps salvation. Shadowmane might wait in jungle shadows or not at all. Daenerys might deem him foe. Tywin might marshal fleets to crush his upstart son. But Tyrion felt the heat of Dragon's breath warming his spine and understood a truth older than Valyria. Power lived in those who dared claim it. Dwarf, dragon, whore, freedman. They would carve their saga into stone. And somewhere behind them, buried in scorched rubble of the Volantine Quay, Mistmaw's embers still smoldered, promising that from ashes yet more fire would rise. Okay. Adinin. One. River fog draped the Royne like funeral gauze, muffling the creak of patched planks and the nervous coughs of the refugees huddled beneath torn sailcloth. Tyrion stood at the prow with a pole in his blistered palms, and Shyfeather coiled about his shoulders like a living mantle of smoldering bronze. The hatchling's once ruby scales had deepened toward garnet, each plate edged in new ridges, and the warmth that seeped through Tyrion's tunic was a reminder both of promise and peril. Every few heartbeats, the dragon's slit pupils narrowed at some shadow upriver, nostrils quivering as if taste-testing the dawn. Once Shyfeather loosed a warning growl so low, Tyrion felt it rather than heard it. But no arrows hissed from the bulrushes, and no Volantine patrol Elijah burst through the reed banks. They had slipped the Triarch net, so far. Mistmaw's memory rode every curl of fog. Tyrion saw the green dragon's broken body tumbling anew from Shadowmane's talons whenever he closed his eyes. Guilt needed him. A beast hatched in his care had died on a whim of hunger and fear. That weight could crush a man as surely as Tywin's iron stare. The only antidote, he told himself in the sleepless hours, was to keep the living dragons alive, to forge their fire into a purpose grand enough to balance the ledger of loss. Purpose, however, required coin, allies, and a place beyond the reach of Triarch assassins. He stabbed the pole into silt and forced the barge toward mid-current. Shay appeared beside him, cheeks soot-streaked, hair tied with a strip of sailcloth. The wounded man died, she said softly. One of the sewer slaves, pierced by a guard's crossbow during their flight. He had lingered a day, moaning through fever until Rhoynar leeches sapped the last of his blood. Tyrion muttered a curse for both the dead man and the living who still needed feeding. "We'll burn him at sunset," he said. "Shyfeather can give him a pyre worthy of princes." The dragon chuffed, sensing its name. They skirted the ruins of Croyan by midday, the water city long ago drowned in grayscale and grief. With half the passengers murmuring prayers against stone men's curse, Tyrion ordered a wide berth, though his own fears lay ahead, not below. He meant to beach before nightfall where the east bank rose into vine-choked jungle. The Sorrow's outer marches, a place where civilization seldom pried. There he would hunt for Shadowmane, or for Shadowmane's corpse. The obsidian dragon had vanished with Mistmaw's body into this wilderness. If it lived, he must reclaim it. 2 dragons could cow 10,000 spears. One alone was merely a miracle, awaiting an arrow. They grounded in twilight, on a spit of gravel, under sagging willow pines. Shay's first act was to draw the refugees into work crews, one to dig latrines, another to gather deadfall, a third to gut the barge and eager stores for a communal broth. Tyrion watched her with weary admiration. Court ladies would have fainted at the reek of bilges. Shay barked orders like a sell-sail bosun and kicked shirkers without ceremony. He recalled Varys's warning that love was a poison cup for men of power. But perhaps he mused, love that survived sewer tunnels and dragonfire forged an alloy stronger than any crown metal. He slung a satchel of dried fish and goat jerky, drank a mouthful of tart river wine, and whistled a command word. Shyfeather sprang skyward, wing beats stirring campfires. "Watch," he told the dragon, pointing toward the black ridge that loomed beyond vine canopy. The hatchling wheeled once, then vanished into gloam. Tyrion turned inland with a half-dozen of his hardiest. 2 former slave pit fighters, a Pentoshi archer with a mangled ear, and 3 sewer boys still thin as reeds, but quick with knives. Shay followed despite protests, dagger in hand. The jungle swallowed them. Night insects shrilled sawdades older than kingdoms. Tyrion's torch cast a trembling comb of light across orchids, large as helmets and vines thick as anchor chains. They trudged upslope through ankle-deep leaf rot. Every snap of twig spun nerves taut. Twice they heard wings overhead and froze, unsure if dragon or vulture. At the crest, they found an overgrown terrace of cracked sandstone blocks. Valyrian handiwork, its glyphs eroded by centuries of rain. Beneath the terrace gaped a cave mouth choked with lianas. The earth outside was scorched in a long, smoky arc that still reeked of sweat and ash. Shyfeather dropped from the canopy, red eyes gleaming. It alighted on a fallen obelisk and crooned into the dark. The cave answered with a guttural rumble, a furnace drawing breath. Torchlight flickered over scales black as moonless water. Shadowmane emerged, wings mantling protectively around a gruesome bundle. Miss Maw's husk, half-eaten, half-rotted. Predators seldom waste meat, Tyrion thought grimly. But around Shadowmane's neck, the bronze collar still gleamed. Embossing Valyrian glyphs, Tyrion alone could speak. He raised the torch. Dracarys, he whispered. A word of fire, but also of fealty. Shadowmane's eyes, molten gold ringed with onyx, fixed upon him. The dragon rumbled again, lower, uncertain. Shyfeather chirped, hopped closer, nuzzled the elder's jaw, bloodkin acknowledging rank. Shadowmane lowered its head, nostrils billowing embers hot enough to bake Tyrion's cheeks. The dwarf forced himself not to flinch. He stepped nearer, boots slick on charred mud, until his palm rested against the dragon's snout. Heat throbbed through scale and flesh, a heartbeat the size of war drums. I grieve with you, he murmured. But we live, you and I, and this little one. We have worlds yet to burn. Shadowmane's breath gusted over him in a sigh. Then the great wings furled, and the dragon angled its head for a scratch, as it had when a hatchling. Relief flooded Tyrion's knees. The pit fighters exhaled as one. One crossed himself to Mother Royne. They returned at dawn, Shadowmane stalking behind, Miss Maw's skull clutched in obsidian talons. A trophy and tombstone. At camp screams rose, but Tyrion bellowed assurances and recited the Valyrian phrases that stilled both dragons. He ordered a funeral mound of driftwood. Shyfeather ignited it with a spurt of orange flame, and Shadowmane joined with a torrent white hot enough to warp armor buckles. Miss Maw's remains vaporized in seconds. A plume of green sparks spiraled into gray sky. The refugees watched, transfixed. When flames dulled, Tyrion climbed the mound's smoking bones. These dragons are my children, he called, voice hoarse. Their fire will avenge your chains, buy your freedom, and shield you from any master who dares shackle you again. Serve me and we shall build a new rock across the sea, one where coin is paid in justice. Silence met him, then a guttering moan of wind. He feared his rhetoric too lofty for men whose bellies growled. Then the Pentoshi archer raised his bow in salute. The pit fighters thumped spear hafts. Slowly others joined. Tanners, washerwomen, street urchins. Their makeshift cheers fanned embers of ambition hotter than any pyre. 3 days they lingered, fortifying the beachhead, felling trees to craft rafts. Shadowmane hunted wild boar, dropping carcasses whole for the kitchens. Tyrion spelled out next steps beneath a canvas awning. They would follow the Royne south to the Jade Coast, trade what little cargo remained for dried provisions, then skirt the coast to the stepstones where pirates sold stolen sails by the dozen. With enough hulls and 2 dragons, they could forge a corsair alliance and raid Triarch shipping until Volantis begged terms. Coin would swell, recruits would flood, and Westeros would read rumors of a new dragon prince rising from exile. Tywin's summons would wither into irrelevance. Yet fate, ever contrary, flung a different gauntlet. On the 5th morning, a sleek galley painted snow-white nosed upriver, under banner of the Iron Bank. Rowers feathered oars as the galley anchored just offshore. A dignitary in sable cloak hailed them from the prow. "Prodigal heir of Casterly Rock, the bank requests an audience." Tyrion tasted bile. The Iron Bank financed wars the way septons recited prayers. If they sought him, his father's gold fingers were already probing Essos. He met the envoy alone beneath the willow pines. The man introduced himself as Tycho Nestoris, though younger and leaner than rumors suggested. His beard was neatly forked, his eyes weighed more than gold, baled in coffers. "Lord Tywin remains the bank's most reliable debtor," Nestoris said without preamble. "We hear troubling accounts of a certain dwarf courting open rebellion." Tyrion spread his hands. "Rebellion is such an ugly word. I prefer entrepreneurship." Nestoris permitted a thin smile. "Call it what you will, your enterprise may disrupt repayment schedules. The bank's patience is legendary but not infinite." "And dragons?" Tyrion asked, cocking his head. "Are they within your actuarial tables?" "Creatures of myth, until quite recently." Nestoris's gaze flicked skyward where Shyfeather circled. "Assets must be valued, collateral assessed." "I intend to refinance my family's reputation," Tyrion said, "with fire for coin and coin for influence. Sponsor me, and when I sit where my father sits now, every Lannister debt will pay double." The banker considered. "Speculative. Then, but opportunity abhors delay. The Triarchs have already bid upon your head. The bank owns half their trade guild notes. Should your ambitions rupture Volantis, our ledgers bleed. How do you propose to mitigate such risk?" By reflex, Tyrion reached for wine but found only air. He countered with numbers. Half the Volantine slave fleet each season grossed 12 million honors. Even 3 months of interdiction could leverage a margin vast enough to service Tywin's loans twice over. "Fund my foothold," he said, "and the dragons will guarantee the toll." Nestoris listened, silent as marble. At length, he produced a parchment bearing terms. Advance of 100,000 golden honors, payable in quarter shares of captured shipping. Collateral: the dragons themselves, should Tyrion perish or default. Tyrion blanched. "The bank cannot chain what it cannot hold." "Then see you do not default." The banker's shrug was as chill as winter rain. Tyrion debated, mind flicking through possibilities. Deny, and he sailed with paltry stores. Accept, and he yoked his fire to Bravos. Yet if he refused, the bank might fund his enemies instead. He pricked his thumb, signed in blood. That night Shay dressed the cut and scolded him. "You've sold your soul." "I pawned it," he corrected, forcing levity. "With option to reclaim." They departed at dawn. The bank's galley left 3 crates heavy with coin, crossbows of Myrish make, and rolls of fine purple sailcloth. Tyrion named the patched barge the Imp's Folly, half in jest. By noon they caught a seaward current and drifted through brackish lagoons toward the coast. Shyfeather gliding ahead, Shadowmane pacing atop mangrove canopy, like some primeval panther with wings. Beyond the delta, the Roynar cliffs yielded to silt marshes, where the air smelled of rot and spice. Here they met the first pirate cogs, ramshackle tubs under striped pennants, captained by men in patchwork mail scavenged from a dozen drowned hosts. Dragons silhouetted against sun persuaded quick parley. Tyrion offered coin for passage to the Broken Arm. The pirates took half and accepted a promise for the rest. By the 4th exchange, rumor preceded him as surely as Shyfeather's shadow. Corsairs hailed him, dragon imp, and raised cups to Mistmoa's pyre story, already bloated to legend of a she-dragon slain by 100 Volantine scorpions. They reached Gaston Grey's ruins in late autumn. The stepstones sprawled like teeth across Sapphire Sea, each isle a fortress of gull nests and broken keeps. Tyrion steered the Imp's Folly into a sheltered cove on Bloodstone, whose craggy shore bristled with purple reefs. To one side languished half-sunk hulks, victims of storms or sellsward quarrels. To the other, a squat watchtower leaned seaward, abandoned save for barnacle crows. Ideal, Tyrion judged, for a fledgling stronghold. His people beached rafts, scavenged stone, and raised palisades. Corsair captains arrived by longboat, curious, suspicious, enticed. Tyrion met them in the shadow of Shadowmane's perch, coin glittering on a wine-stained table. Captains of Lysine Reavers, Mirish Licornays, even a lean summer island caravel pledged oars for shares of future tolls. Within a fortnight, a flotilla of 17 sail flew crimson pennants bearing a lion's paw ringed by flame. The new flag of House Lannister Valyrian, daubed by Shay's own hand. By moonlight, Tyrion drilled dragon maneuver. Shy feathers swooping low over mizzenmasts, igniting target dummies soaked in fish oil. Shadowmane executing slow, disciplined strafes along palisades, flame curtailed at Tyrion's shouted command. The younger dragon's tattered wing knit under Shay's poultices of honey and bone ash. Soon the creature outraced hawks, leaving contrails of heat that shimmered like mirages. Yet power bred enemies faster than friends. One dawn, a Taroshi war Galeas thundered across the strait, catapults armed. Its captain, a flamboyant scarlet-bearded magister named Lycoros, demanded tribute for trespass. Tyrion invited him ashore for parley and seated him in a sandstone courtyard, the same courtyard wherein Mistmola's skull now rested on a pillar. When Lycoros bragged that Tyrosh would claim dragon eggs by decree, Tyrion signaled. Shadowmane descended, landing so close the concussive gust knocked the magister flat. The dragon bellowed, exhaling a gout of flame that ended inches shy of Lycoros's jeweled sandal. Lycoros voided bowels and signed a treaty of mutual neutrality. His war Galeas sailed away under Lannister banners by dusk. With each victory, Tyrion's coffers swelled. Slave galleys captured near the haunted isle yielded ivory and spice cargo worth a prince's ransom. Half the profits paid his crews. The rest purchased pitch, iron, and maester's books on dragon husbandry, smuggled from Old Town. He installed a forge atop the watchtower where smiths tempered chainmail sized for scaled necks. He compelled his pit fighters to don suits of boiled leather, sewn with brass scales. Thus dragonfire drills burned men minimally, though screams still haunted midnight. In letters he employed black sails to slip across seas. One to Prince Doran Martell, offering trade of Volantine olives for Dornish spears. One to the Stormlander remnants whose castles lay shattered by Lannister swords, promising justice if they raised banners anew. But the most perilous letter he penned to Daenerys Stormborn, now rumored besieging Meereen with freedmen legions. He addressed her as, "Your Grace, my distant cousin in flame," and spoke frankly. He shared her dream of a freer world, but the old order in Westeros must burn first. He offered alliance when both their wings swept east to west across the narrow sea. The letter he sealed with wax impressed by a hybrid sigil, lion crowned by dragon wings. Weeks stretched into months. Bloodstone Keep, so his ragtag colony styled the leaning watchtower, buzzed with saws and hammers. Shyfeather's wingspan reached 18 feet. Shadowmane's eyes now gleamed with a sentience that unsettled even pit fighters. Tyrion wore a mantle sewn from flayed pirate banners, and his name echoed across taverns from Tyrosh to Sunspear. But empire seeds sprout enemies unseen. One frost dusk a whisper of wings announced a courier raven. It bore 2 parchments. The first sealed with Varys' spider sigil and dusted in Myrish perfume. Tyrion slit it open. "Little lion with little dragons," it read. "Your father is dead. Crossbow bolt through the gut. Rumor points to your own brother, though tongues differ. Cersei rules as queen regent, Tommen atop a throne of molten fear. She blames you for patricide, proclaims you traitor and kinslayer, sets a price upon your head equal to the crown's annual income. Westeros awaits your next jest." Tyrion sat, numb. Father dead. Jaime accused. 1,000 tangled emotions fought for purchase. Vindication, grief, relief, horror. He remembered Tywin's voice hissing, "I wanted to carry you out to sea and let the waves drown you, but your mother begged." Now those waves had caught the great lion at last, but by what hunter's hand? Jaime's? He could not fathom. Unless... The dwarf felt a gulf open inside him into which the years of scorn tumbled like stones. Yet tears stung. No hate extinguishes blood in a blink. He unrolled the second parchment, iron bank seals again. It stated, curtly, that with Lord Tywin's demise, the Lannister accounts stood frozen pending coronation review IY. All future disbursements suspended. Interest compounding. Ice replaced grief. The bank would strangle him as readily as aid him if payments lapsed. And Cersei's bounty would draw knives across half the world. Even here, in a nest of cutthroats, coin trumped oaths. That night, he locked himself in the Leaning Tower's topmost chamber, drafts shrieking through cracked stone. Shadowmane roosted on the parapet beyond arched windows, its breath pluming white under winter stars. Shyfeather curled in a brazier, tail flicking sparks. Tyrion poured firewine and stared into the cup as if it held prophecy. "A Lannister always pays his debts," he muttered. But which debt first, blood or gold? Shay joined him, hair smelling of ash and sea salt. She lifted his chin. "Come to bed. Tomorrow we choose a side." "I have no sides left," he said. "Only edges." But dawn's pale light carried clarity. He convened his captains in the courtyard where Mismaw's skull watched. "Westeros lies wounded," he told them. "A lioness rules, blinded by rage. Her coffers near empty, her allies fracturing. Across the world rides another queen with 3 dragons. We sail not for plunder alone now. We sail to decide which dragon wins." Some balked. Others burned with fervor. The Pentoshi archer proposed they court Stannis Baratheon instead, but Tyrion scorned Stannis' brittle pride. "No," he said. "We will ride the winning gale, not face it head-on." So began the pivot eastward. 5 ships refitted with triple-strength masts, protected by chain mesh draped like curtains against scorpion bolts. Shadowmane would fly escort. Shyfeather roost within flagship hold until stronger. They stocked freshwater casks, salted goat, barrels of oranges against scurvy. The Iron Bank's final tranche paid a Myrianese pilot to guide them up the Skahazadon Delta. Corsair captains chafed at leaving the rich stepstone lanes, but Tyrion promised a richer first pick of Lannister gold once they seized Casterly Rock itself. Some laughed, but not for long. Shadowmane's morning flame made fine punctuation. Before departure, Tyrion walked alone to the highest crag, the wind tugging his patched cloak. Below, Bloodstone bustled like an anthill. He carried nothing but wine and a velvet pouch heavy with Mismaw's scorched fang. He knelt, poured a libation to the deep and whispered, "Forgive me. I will not waste your death." He scattered the fang shards to gulls who wheeled and shrieked. The fleet sailed on a moonless tide. Shay stood by the quarterdeck rail, arm linked through his. "You could have ruled here," she said. "Why gamble all?" "Because Father's ghost will never cease hounding me while his stone kingdom stands." He brushed her cheek. "And because somewhere a Silver Queen plays her own Game of Thrones with dragons larger than mine, I must learn from her, or burn opposite her." Days slipped into weeks across the summer sea. Storms bruised masts, and one corsair lagged behind, lost to a green gale. Shyfeather learned to skim wave crests, snatching flying fish mid-air. Shadowmane dove after leviathans, dragging a thrashing sea worm onto a galley deck, so that sailors hacked at coils the girth of tree trunks. The smell of brine and blood became the fleet's incense. Off Nath, butter-brown fishermen raised conch horns in alarm, but the dragons ignored them. Tyrion forbade plunder of peaceful isles. "We are lions, not mongrel curs," he told scowling captains. Each moral stance cost him goodwill, yet bought a sliver of the future realm he envisioned. Reputation, he believed, was a currency as vital as gold, and he would not purchase it with defenseless flesh. South of the Basilisk Isles they halted to caulk seams. Under twilight canopy, the pit fighters pitted themselves against Shadowmane in mock battle, dodging swats of its tail to toughen reflexes. Shay sparred with them, agile, laughing, until Tyrion's heart clenched. In another life she might have ruled a pavilion adorned with jewels. Here she wore ragged linen and sweat, but her grin dwarfed any jewel. He thought of proposing marriage in Rhoynar fashion. Shared cup of sweet water and vow beneath stars, yet fear knotted his courage. What place had love on a board of dragons and debts? The fleet rounded Cape Talon and angled through the Jade Straits where Valyrian ruins pockmarked cliffs like broken fangs. On the horizon rose marines, pyramids crowned by harpy statues. Plumes of smoke smudged morning sky. Siege fires, the pilot said. Queen Daenerys still fought rebels within and slavers without. Tyrion's gambit stood upon a knife. If he entered as ally, he might be welcomed or seized by unsullied spears and fed to Drogon. He ordered all banners furled, horns silent. A white flag of parley curled above the figurehead, a lion paw daubed in pale ash. Longboats ferried him ashore at Drunkard's Walk, where sand dunes bore charred timbers and blackened bones. He left armor behind, choosing a plain wool doublet, and a single dragon scale hung as pendant. Shadowmane circled high, visible yet distant. Shyfeather perched on his leather-padded shoulder, tail looped round his torso for balance. Shay stayed aboard, crossbow in hand, ready to slit sails and flee if he did not return by dawn. At the Harpy Gate, Unsullied barred his way, expressionless behind copper masks. Tyrion spoke in High Valyrian, presenting himself as Tyrion of House Lannister, exile and dragon lord of the West, seeker of audience with Daenerys Stormborn. They searched him, confiscated wine flask and hidden dirk, left the pendant and the dragon, whose hiss parted their shield wall quicker than oaths. He marched through Meereen's ash-slick streets under spear escort. Blackened harpy statues toppled across plazas. Children chased feral dogs through smoke. Tyrion glimpsed crucified slavers lining a boulevard, their flesh picked raw by gulls. Justice, fierce and unpolished. He felt both admiration and dread. In a pillared atrium, torchlight haloed a slender figure upon a dais of razored obsidian. Daenerys Targaryen wore a scale-woven gown the shade of fresh snow, silver hair swept back in a warrior's tail. At her feet prowled Drogon, vast and night-black, scarred by siege scorpions. The dragon's amber eyes fixed on Shyfeather. An electric stillness sundered the hall. Tyrion bowed, mindful of Drogon's breath hot against his scalp. The queen's voice was soft but laced with steel. My hand speaks of a dwarf lord building pyres in the west. I told him tales grow wilder than dragons in the telling. Yet here you stand, dwarf and dragon both. Why come you? Done? Tyrion rose. Because our enemies call us monsters. Because our fathers' thrones reek of rot. Because fire cleans as well as kills, and we both wield it. She eyed him, unblinking. You seek alliance then? Or absolution? Neither without the other. I bring ships, sellswords, gold, and the counsel of one who knows Cersei's heart as well as his own. He swallowed. I also bring a debt. My dragons murdered a child in Volantis. Their blood is on my hands. Show me how to rule their fire without drowning in it, and I will serve you as scribe, hostage, anything you command, so long as Westeros burns bright enough that old ghosts may finally sleep. Men know. The queen's gaze flicked to Shyfeather, who chirped cautiously at Drogon. A flicker of amusement touched her lips. He's bold, she said, to perch before a dragon who could swallow him whole. Bold or foolish? I've never known where the line lies. Her smile vanished as swift as it came. I met your sister once in King's Landing. I saw the lioness in her eyes, hungry for power. Hers is a hunger that wastes everything it touches. Will you waste for me as well? Damn. Tyrion Lannister wastes nothing except his breath on fools, he answered. And he no longer wastes that. She considered. Drogon snorted smoke. Shyfeather answered with a tiny plume. At last Daenerys nodded. Your dragons may camp in the marble quarry outside the walls. Your fleet will anchor at River Gate until inspected. Harm one freedman under my protection, and you will answer to Drogon. Serve faithfully, and you will sit on my war council when we sail. Nemder wow. Tyrion exhaled a breath he hadn't known he held. He bent knee. My queen, he said. My fire is yours. Later, upon terrace watching dusk paint the Skahazadon russet, he found Daenerys at the balustrade. Whip scars marred her bare arms, fading, but reminders that her path to rulership was paved with ash. She offered him a goblet of honeyed wine. Tell me, implored, she said, voice softer than before. What cost has your fire? Asked so far. He thought of Nisma's skull, of father's corpse cooling in crimson sheets, of Shay waiting upon a deck she feared she might never see again. Enough, he said quietly, that I will not squander the living flame left to me. She nodded as if weighing the honesty of that answer against the weight of future choices. Beyond the terrace, torches bloomed along the harbor where his ship swayed in mild tide. Shadowmane soared over the pyramids, huge against violet sky. Drogon rose from his perch to follow, two shadows entwining like twin comets poised to remap the heavens. Tyrion sipped wine, tasted smoke and sweetness. The game board had grown, stakes writ in dragonfire. Yet, for the first time since birth, he did not feel small. A sea of torch flames shimmered against Marine's inner walls, as the celebration spilled from the Great Pyramid into the plazas below. Drums pounded like 100 rebellious hearts. Freedwomen danced barefoot on crimson carpets of hibiscus petals. Even the unsullied allowed themselves faint, tight-lipped smiles, though their spear points never dipped. Above, 3 living constellations twined against the dusk. The great black Drogon, the lean gold-green Rhaegal, and behind them, slower but sure-winged, Shadowmane and Shyfeather. Their silhouettes crossed and recrossed the face of the rising moon like heraldic sigils alive and molten. Whenever flame erupted from a throat, the crowd roared as though fire itself had elected a queen. Tyrion nursed watered wine on a balcony high above the clamor. The drink tasted of cloves and damp slate, half ruined by the night's humidity. But he savored each swallow anyhow, for tonight, at least, he was no longer a fugitive dwarf making bargains in sewer tunnels. Tonight he was the newest counselor to the Dragon Queen, privy to every whisper of strategy and every quarrel of her fractious lieutenants. Tomorrow would bring the dull roar of logistics, fleets to supply, rations to finalize, allies to appease. But tonight belonged to living, to memory, to the knowledge that at last he leaned over a balcony of his own choosing. Shay emerged from the lamplit corridor, hair no longer bound with rag, but adorned with a slender bronze circlet Daenerys had gifted. A token, the queen said, for the woman bold enough to follow a dwarf and his dragons through half a world. Shay lifted her arms over the balustrade, letting warm wind comb her curls. Tyrion drew nearer, took her hand, and traced the faint scar along her thumb. A single look between them recalled sewer escapes, pirate skirmishes, and Nisma's funeral pyre. Words felt superfluous. Below, Grey Worm addressed a company of former pit gladiators who had pledged their blades to Daenerys after the Battle of the Fire Circus. Beside him, Missandei read agreements of wages and discipline in 5 tongues. Dario Naharis, now returned from a sortie against Yunkai, lounged with one boot propped on a fallen harpy wing, recounting some wicked jest to a knot of Taroshi sellswords. Yet every conversation stuttered whenever a dragon shrieked. Fear and awe remained the only currency all men understood. Tyrion. Shay breathed, leaning closer. Do you believe her? That she means to break the wheel? Not merely replace the cogs with her own? He considered. Believe. I believe Daenerys Targaryen possesses more conviction than any ruler I have known. Whether conviction alone can outpace the inertia of history, well, wheels are stubborn things. He sipped. But a dragon's talon may dent even iron spokes. Shay brushed his cheek. And your own wheel. You spoke of justice, of freeing chains, yet you still dream of Casterly Rock. Yes. He met her gaze. Because the rock has ground generations beneath its weight. My father is dead, but the system he worshipped lives on in Tommen's crown and Cersei's spite. If it must fall, best it fall to one who knows all its hidden gears. He smiled without mirth. And all its secret tunnels. She rested her forehead against his. Promise me the fire you wield will not burn us too. I promise only to steer the blaze toward those who lit it first. Footsteps echoed. Varys glided onto the balcony, robe whispering silk mystery. The eunuch bowed to Shay like she wore rubies. Beg pardon, my lords. He corrected himself with an impish smile. My lord and lady, but her grace convenes her war council within the hour. Fresh tidings from Astapor and Volantis demand rapid digestion. His gaze flicked from Tyrion to the dragons overhead. And perhaps a pinch of flame-grilled confidence. Tyrion sighed at the lost chance for Revel's lull, but nodded. I will attend. As Varys withdrew, he added softly, Tell Grey Worm to pick 3 men he trusts most and see they stand outside the council door. Tonight feels ripe for daggers. The spider's brows quirked, acknowledging shared paranoia. Then he vanished. Shay kissed Tyrion's brow, lingered at the balcony while he departed. She would join him later in guest chambers high under the pyramid's apex, chambers more luxurious than any they had shared, yet still haunted by ghosts of stone cells and barge holds. Tyrion lingered a moment longer to watch Shyfeather diving playful arcs around one of Rhaegal's green-gold wings. Then he descended spiral stairs lit by flickering braziers. The council chamber occupied a triangular hall, just beneath the pyramid's summit garden. One wall gaped open to star-salt air, giving perfect perch for Drogon. Tonight the great beast crouched there, neck curved watchful as a siege tower. Daenerys sat on a plain chair of hewn blackwood at the apex of the triangle. To her right, Missandei, Ser Barristan Selmy grey-bearded and solemn, Grey Worm in immaculate bleached armor, and the melancholy hulking form of strong Belwas, now thinner after wounds but still apt to brag. He used liver spots as studs on his stomach. To the queen's left, Dario twirling his stiletto, Varys folding pale fingers, the red priestess Kinvara, eyes smoldering in devotion to her lord of light. And an empty chair. The modest carven lion Shyfeather had scorched earlier in mischief, waiting for Tyrion. He took his place, nodding to each officer in turn. Scrolls littered the table like uprooted flower beds. Daenerys gestured. Proceed, please. Grey Worm spoke first. Scouts reported Yunkai beset by plague and dissent. The Yunkish Yellow Fleet lay rotting, its admiral deposed by freed oarsmen. Opportunity to capture hulls for the crossing. Barristan countered. Marching there risked thinning Meereen's garrison while the sons of the Harpy still skulked. Dario suggested a swift cavalry raid, loot the arsenals, leave local rebels to finish the job. Kinvara murmured that the flames showed a city of yellow banners drowning in red. Blood would flow regardless. Tyrion tapped knuckles. Ships we require, but not at the cost of momentum. Every delay grants Cersei time to cement power. Raise scorpion lines, bribe lords. He unrolled a parchment stamped with Ironbank cipher. And Braavos now withholds further lending until debts in King's Landing are addressed. If we seize Yonkai's fleet, we risk antagonizing Braavosi partners, who hold shares in its slave consortium. Far wiser to accept the Yellow Fleet's surrender intact. Promise wages, a future free of broken chains. He slid a second parchment forward. Draft terms already inked. We send envoys. Supported by dragons overhead, most captains will trade sides when offered coin and amnesty. Those who refuse, Drogon's appetite solves that deficit. Dario chuckled. Ever the pragmatist, Lannister. Daenerys' gaze drilled Tyrion. And you trust Braavos not to betray us to my sister. The bank swore neutrality before my birth, then lent Lannister gold to crush my house. I trust no bank, he admitted. But I understand interest. The bank wants stability that guarantees repayment. Demonstrate that we are inevitable, and they will grease our wheels regardless of early misgivings. Our show of mercy at Yunkai costs less than rebuilding burned hulls. Varys nodded approval. Grey Worm withheld judgment, but studied the parchment anew. Next came news from Volantis. The Triarchs, humiliated by Tyrion's earlier raids, had contracted the Golden Company to retake Bloodstone and capture the dwarf's dragons. The Golden Company, 10,000 veterans, elephants, a repute for loyalty to paymasters. They embarked from Volantis 2 weeks past, destination uncertain, but likely stepstones first, then Meereen. Tyrion felt a chill. He knew of company discipline, of war elephants trampling shield walls on the disputed coast. Shadowmane burned ships. Elephants didn't sail well. They would come by land, perhaps slip upriver. Plans demanded reshaping. Sir Barristan urged meeting them head-on outside Marine's walls, where unsullied drill could form perfect spear phalanx quite. Dario scoffed. Cavalry needed open desert. Grey Worm offered to lure them into city streets, strangle them block by block. Tyrion interjected. Rather than fight their whole strength, we bribe pieces. The companies contract lives on coin, tempt half their officers with double wages and promises of lands across the narrow sea, then torment the remainder with dragons above and saboteurs below. Selmy frowned. Honor cannot be bought. Honor fed little, Tyrion retorted. Which is why the Golden Company sells swords in the first place. Daenerys raised palm, stilling argument. This quarrel may wait. Yunkai first. I approve your treaty approach, Lord Tyrion, but you will lead the envoy beneath my banner. Take Shyfeather as token. Small, but unmistakable. Grey Worm, choose 50 unsullied as honor guard. Dario, circle the city with your stormcrows. If their gates close, burn their food and wells. Kinvara's voice dripped flame. And the Lord of Light shall reveal traitors in yellow garb. Allow his servants to join. Mender. The queen hesitated, then agreed reluctantly. Tyrion swallowed. Envoy missions seldom ended in comfortable parlors. Yet he inclined head. Ace my queen commands. Council sorted lesser matters. Plague cures, grain barges, calendar of feasts to woo citizen loyalty. At last, Daenerys dismissed them. When Tyrion stood, she beckoned him alone. They walked to the balcony where Drogon's massive silhouette loomed. The dragon's breaths gusted hot enough to wilt nearby vines. But queen and dwarf paid no mind. You took a risk coming here, she said, gaze steady on the dark curve of horizon. Risked 2 dragons, a fleet, the bank's patience. Why did you not strike for Westeros alone? Your rock stands vulnerable with your sister beset. He sighed. Because I have long learned that victory tastes like ashes unless someone worth serving shares the cup. And because I fear the monster that would rise within me if I unleashed my dragons without your guidance. You know what it is to burn cities. I seek your counsel, so I never do so in rage. She studied him, weighing sincerity. Our fathers left us toxic legacies. Together perhaps we may craft something cleaner. He offered a wry bow. Cleaner fire, then. She smiled faintly. And then, the Yunkai envoy rode at dawn 2 days later. 50 unsullied marched spear straight ahead, Tyrion upon a shaggy red camel that wafted disdain at every stride. Shyfeather gliding above like a copper-roofed kite. Kinvara accompanied, crimson veil fluttering, promising the Lord of Light's blessing. Behind, 2 supply wagons carried barrel wine, barrels of dried fig, and barrels of parchment copies of the treaty in Valyrian, Giscari, and even coarse Yunkish. At midday, the city's ochre walls rose from dunes, sun-bleached faces pocked with old trebuchet scars. Yellow banners hung limp. Along parapets archers fidgeted, scorpion ballistae jutted like iron thorns. Tyrion halted his camel at Parley Marker, an obelisk carved with enslaved giants forced to kneel. Memories of chain rattles stirred bile. He raised a golden-capped staff Daenerys had bestowed. Shyfeather banked once, flapped to settle upon the marker top, tail curling. Uneasy murmurs rippled along ramparts. Presently, the gates groaned open. A delegation emerged, a corpulent Yunkish envoy in saffron silk, littered with pearl brooches, flanked by 2 copper-skinned sparmasters wearing insect helmets. Behind them trudged half a dozen girls styled as pleasure wives, chains about their slender throats. For show, Yunkai adored spectacle. Tyrion hid disgust behind polite leer. Parley began. He offered scrolls, terms, glimpses of Shyfeather's fang-rimmed yawn. The Yunkish envoy sweated rivulets beneath perfume. Surrender our fleet? Outrage. Yunkish dignity. Tyrion interrupted. Mild. Dignity is lovely. Life is lovelier. He pointed to Shyfeather. My eldest sibling there enjoys roasting ships, but sails make poor meals. Offer them, and perhaps your city retains its walls. He withdrew a second scroll. a guarantee signed by Daenerys and co-signed by Braavosi factors, pledging reparations for any freedman's property lost in transition. Daisy chain logic of finance danced across seals. Accept and become partners. Refuse and become pages in a history footnote labeled Dracarys. No. While interpreters babbled, Tyrion studied faces of sparmasters. They eyed the Unsullied with grudging respect. Many served as mercenaries once. One appeared near his own age, scar bisecting upper lip. That soldier's gaze flicked to the girl's chains, to Shyfeather, to Tyrion. Recognition. Perhaps rumors traveled faster than ravens. Tyrion made mental note. Kinvara meanwhile declaimed in High Valyrian a prophecy of night turned day, and chains melted by holy flames. The envoy snapped something about heathen madness. Negotiations teetered. Tyrion sighed. Time for theater. He raised gloved hand. Shyfeather spread wings. Tyrion spoke Valyrian command. Brighten the day, little flame. The dragon belched a narrow lance of fire that traced a perfect arc above the Yunkish envoy's turban, singing silk but sparing flesh. Turban erupted into sparks, envoy shrieked, slapped head, perfume cinders stinking. Spears leveled, but Unsullied responded by lowering points in silent harmony. Sweat-soaked envoy quaked so violently rings tinkled like chimes. Consider that a footnote preview, Tyrion said. Now shall we return to percentages? By dusk Yonkai's slender white flag fluttered from its tallest turret. The yellow fleet sailed at dawn under new banners, depicting a broken chain wreathed by lion claws and dragon wings. Tyrion watched from shore as hull after hull glided into Meereen's control. No blood spilled, no plague soared, save for one stubborn galley whose captain attempted mutiny. Shyfeather solved mutiny with one leisurely conflagration. The envoy with scorched turban became first governor of Free Yunkai, answerable to Daenerys and subject to Gardak, an elected council of freedmen proposed by Tyrion. Kinvara insisted each meeting begin with prayer. Tyrion countered by inviting priests of the many-faced god and the Summer Isles to keep zeal balanced. No wheel rolls straight on one spoke, he quipped. Victory gladdened Meereen's bazaars, yet clouds brewed eastward. The Golden Company had indeed seized Bloodstone. Reports said they executed any corsair flying the Lion and Flame pennant, nailed skulls to jetty posts with labels reading traitor to contract. Worse, they captured Shay's friend Saram, quartermaster of the IM's Folly, and now demanded that Tyrion Lannister present his dragons on Bloodstone, for surrender or see Saram flayed. Tyrion raged at the message. Shyfeather sensed fury and shrieked. Shay wanted to set sail immediately. Grey Worm advised caution. Daenerys mediated. The campaign for Westeros loomed. Could Tyrion divert 2 dragons across half the summer sea to rescue one man? Tyrion felt shame that the queen needed ask. He begged 1 week. If he failed to secure a safe exchange diplomatically, he would defer. But he refused to abandon Saram as demonstration of hostage logic. Daario volunteered his Stormcrows for the venture, but Tyrion suspected Daario's love for risk overshadowed reason. Instead, he formed a smaller detachment, 100 Unsullied, 10 of Tyrion's veteran pit fighters, and a single war galley newly rechristened Mistmaw's Revenge. Shadowmane would fly escort. Shyfeather remained with Daenerys to guard Meereen. They departed on winds that stank of charred pitch. Tyrion clutched Saram's ledgers in his cabin, proof of quartermaster's value, and drafted letters to 6 Golden Company captains, offering triple pay for revolt against their commander, the indomitable General Miles Codd, a man rumored to polish his elephant's tusks with prisoner's marrow. Bribes alone might not split such loyalties, yet he sent the ravens anyway. The voyage proved swift. On the 6th dusk Bloodstone's reefs knifed through purple surf, and bonfires blazed upon ramparts built from Tyrion's former palisades. Enemy trumpets barked. Zeegish scorpions swiveled to track Shadowmane's silhouette. Under flag of truce, Tyrion rode ashore with 2 Unsullied. Golden Company knights awaited, gilded artisans' work glinting. General Codd emerged astride a hairless war elephant painted crimson, javelins sheathed along its flanks. At his feet knelt Saram, wrists bound, face swollen. Cod boomed a greeting. "Imp of Lannister, twice traitor, first to your father, now to his realm. You stole their dragons. We shall deliver them to the Iron Throne and enjoy your sister's gratitude." Tyrion kept voice calm. "My sister rewards gratitude with wildfire. Ask the ashes of Blackwater Bay." Taunts traded. Tyrion offered ransom, 10,000 honors and safe passage if Cod released Sarum and quit Bloodstone. Cod laughed, demanded Shadowmane's egg remnants instead. Tyrion admitted there were none. Dragons hatched whole. At that claim, Cod's mood darkened. He probably feared an endless clutch waiting to break. Tyrion saw the man's eyes flick toward the sky, gauging distance to the roost where siege scorpions had line of fire. Shadowmane swept overhead, a living eclipse, though holding flame at Tyrion's mental command. Even so, scorpion crews took aim. Tyrion's stomach clenched. One misstep and bolts would rip membrane to tatters. Cod produced a whip signal. "Yield the beast now, or your man dies screaming." He cracked the whip. An elephant bellowed. Archers knocked. Tyrion's instincts warred. He could order Dracarys and risk Saram's life, and his own if bolts skewered indiscriminately, or he could feign surrender. His mind whirred. Compassion weighed against wartime calculus. Then he recalled Saram's ledger. The quartermaster kept codes to hidden caches of Braavosi coin stashed beneath Bloodstone Keep. If Cod killed Saram, those caches would remain unknown. Money the Golden Company could not loot, but Tyrion also lost, a blow to both. He made decision. "Dracarys," he whispered. Too soft for Cod, but Shadowmane heard. The dragon banked sideways, spewed incandescent fury onto the nearest scorpion nest, igniting hemp ropes, blasting oak to splinters. Bolts discharged awry. One whizzed past Tyrion's ear, another punched the sea in froth. The war elephant trumpeted in terror. Cod fought reins. Tyrion hurled a knife he concealed in sleeve. Small, but it nicked the beast's flank. Elephant reared, flinging Cod backward. Saram rolled clear. Unsullied rushed, severed bonds, pulled the quartermaster toward Surf. Shadowmane turned on second seed clutch. Golden Company pikemen broke formation under tidal wave of heat. Fires leapt from tar cauldrons. Palisade timbers crackled. Bolts soared, but Dragon's sinuous arcs defied aim. Within minutes, beach camp turned inferno. From seaward Nisma's revenge slammed ballistae bolts into causeway towers. Pit fighters roared slaughter, charging embers. Tyrion's world shrank to sand underfoot. Taste of iron in mouth. Shrieks of men and beast, and Shadowmane's wrathful hymn overhead. He dragged Saram to skiff. Unsullied shielded them with bronze. On the return Cod's screams echoed as his own burning elephant crushed him. The Golden Company survivors rallied behind interior walls, but beach and harbor lay lost. Shadowmane perched on keep roof, detaching stone slabs with talons so they crashed into muster yard. Tyrion signaled recall. To linger courted Lucky Bolt. The dragon obeyed, chasing their skiff to sea, then vaulting skyward toward solar updrafts. Nisma's revenge hoisted sail. Arrows plinked off stern. Tyrion fell beside Saram, cut the remaining rope ties, barked for wine. Quartermaster wept with gratitude, but Tyrion's relief curdled with guilt. He had gambled Saram's life and won by inches. Strategy seldom resembled the neat lines of parchments. They limped east, hull scorched, sails ragged, but alive. Shadowmane shepherded dolphins, dropping one onto deck as gift. Cracked spine, but fresh meat for crew. Saram's first act upon waking from laudanum sleep was to reveal the Braavosi Cache's map, etched in invisible ink between ledger pages. Tyrion grinned. Coin to pay Unsullied and Stormcrows for 6 months, plus bribes for Golden Company deserters, now leaderless. Back in Meereen, Daenerys greeted them with embrace broader than protocol. Grey Worm saluted Saram, freedman hero now. Shay clung to Tyrion until tears soaked his collar. Yet triumph was brief. News arrived of Euron Greyjoy's armada smashing Reach fleets off Fair Isle. of Cersei's coronation feast featuring Qyburn's new scorpion model, capable of piercing dragon scale at twice prior range. The clock ticked. Marine mustered. Dragons trained. Yunkai restored harbors. 7 months after Tyrion first knelt before Daenerys, the invasion fleet gathered on Slaver's Bay. Over 900 ships, some slender Dornish dramans, others fat cog hulks, yellow fleet triremes rowed by volunteers. Atop the flagship, renamed Aegon's Roar, Daenerys unfurled a banner half black-red dragon, half crimson-gold lion aflame. Voyage to Westeros proved laced with storms. Half-tame Shadowmane scouted ahead, Shyfeather perched upon mainmast. Tyrion drafted codes for harbors, scribbled secret letters to his brother Jaime, now commanding Lannister legions in the Crown Lands. One letter he burned unsent, apology to Cersei for crimes she would never pardon. Another he sealed in case he died en route, leaving both dragons to Daenerys, with plea that Shae receive lands for life. They made landfall at Cape Wrath, where rainwood pine smelled of salt and moss. Stannis' abandoned stronghold of Storm's End loomed grim but empty. Garrison surrendered after Drogon's solitary roar. Tarth dispatched supplies, its even star long friendly to dragons by legend. Up the King's Road marched combined hosts. Dothraki screamers thundered flanking plains. Dornish spears under House Martell banners, northbound after decades of sand feuds, unsullied ranks beating time. King's Landing readied wildfire caches. Scorpion towers bristling along walls. Cersei hanged Dornish envoys from battlements. Ravens fluttered rags of their cloaks over the city. Qyburn's rumor network sowed fear that Daenerys would crucify every loyalist. Small folk starved as granaries taxed double for war chest. Lannister gold mines, once bottomless, now coughed dust. Jaime rode south to parley at Bitterbridge. Tyrion met him beneath Weeping Willow by Blackwater Rush, each guarded by 2 knights no more. Jaime had lost right hand, gained lines around eyes. When he dismounted, brothers studied each other in morning mist. "I killed father," Jaime said without preamble. "Not for love of you or of Tommen, but because he ordered me from the Kingsguard." He half smiled. "I am still a fool about vows." Tyrion's throat tightened. "I know. Cersei hates me too now," Jaime confessed. "But I'm still sworn to protect the realm. Do you truly mean to put it to torch?" "My fire aims for tyranny, not the folk," Tyrion answered. He gestured skyward. Shyfeather hovered distant, wings the color of dusk. "Help us unseat the tyrant and we restrain the fire." Jaime's gaze drifted to the east, where unsullied ranks gleamed like new-forged silver. "You risk everything on a promise from dragons. And you risk nothing because your hand is gone," Tyrion shot back softly. "Risk something again, brother. Stand for a queen who frees children, not one who cages them." They parted without oath. Yet that night, Tyrion's spies reported Jaime refusing to command Scorpion lines. The Lion of Lannister might not fight for Daenerys, but he would not fight against her. Mando. The next dawn dawned unnatural green. Thick fog from Blackwater mingled with wildfire fumes Qyburn test burned near the Mudgate. Tyrion stood on Aegon's Hill where Aegon once glimpsed his victory before dragons screamed. Beside him Daenerys mounted Drogon. Behind her Tyrion clambered onto Shadowmane as scaled back, Shae helping fasten his saddle straps. "Return to command tent and pray," he told her. She only kissed his knuckles and whispered, "Come back whole." Horn blasts signaled commencement. Unsullied, advanced, shield-locked, Dornish arrows arced overhead. Within city, bells rang a cacophony, perhaps to rally faith, perhaps to drown screams. Dragons took flight. Tyrion's stomach lurched as Shadowmane surged skyward, wings beating hurricane gusts. Below, Shyfeather circled artillery bastion by the river gate, spitting short bursts that panicked gunners. Drogon soared above Red Keep and loosed a column of fire that vaporized a scorpion nest before bolts could track him. Atop a new bastion on Eris's old ruined walls, Qyburn's monstrous triple-armed scorpion turned on Shadowmane. Tyrion felt a tremor. Dragon sensed threat. He shouted and Shadowmane veered, but bolt thundered past, ripped membrane. Pain roar shattered air. Tyrion clung as the dragon listed, losing altitude. Second bolt loaded. He glimpsed Lannister liveried crew. No time. He drew the Valyrian horn Kinvara. Claimed could channel flame through mortal lungs, but his breath faltered. Instead he slid down saddle strap and bellowed. Dracarys to the iron? Shadowmane banked ragged. Flame welled, burst in ragged cone that engulfed Scorpion. Metal glowed red. Rope pulleys snapped. Gunner screams ended in firestorm. Yet, damage done. Shadowmane faltered, landing heavy on the burned parapet. Tyrion dismounted, twisted ankle, cursed. He tugged blade, sliced away torn canvas from wing joint, applied quick cogue powder. All around battle raged, unsullied, broke through King's Gate. Dothraki screams echoed in Flea Bottom. From the Red Keep Cersei's banner still flew, golden lion roaring defiance. Drogon strafed ramparts but held back main flame. Daenerys sought surrender, not massacre. Tyrion limped to vantage. Saw wildfire barrels along narrow streets ready to detonate if Dothraki pressed. Cersei planned to burn her own city again. Tyrion's mind raced. Ring bells? He recalled father's lecture. Sigils deceive. He must send one. He found bell tower of great sept, ruined shell since Cersei's last wildfire atrocity, but bronze bell remained on timber crossbeam. He hacked rope, fed free and through pulley, lashed to Shadowmane's saddle ring. Then he coaxed the beast. Lift, he whispered. Despite pain, Shadowmane beat wings, raising bell inches, then feet. The bell clanged as iron tongue struck. One toll, then another. Across city, small folk recognized the plea older than kings. Surrender. On second ring scorpions ceased. Third and fourth. Red Keep battlements drooped white cloths. Tyrion slumped to knees as Shadowmane released rope. In silence thick as midnight snow, gates opened. Queen Daenerys landed Drogon before the Red Keep. A single rider emerged. Jaime, disheveled, sword raised hilt first. He knelt before Drogon, surrendering. Behind him shuffled Cersei, gown torn, eyes wide with equal parts fury and terror. Tyrion hobbled down broken stairs, joined Daenerys, Varys, Grey Worm. Cersei's gaze locked on him. She spat. Monster. Tyrion bowed slightly. Sister. He gestured to the burning scorpions, the smoldering gate. The wheel turns. Trial and sentencing would come later. For now, Daenerys turned to the throngs gathering in courtyard. Knights dropping swords, small folk crying for mercy. She spoke. Kneel, and no dragon will harm you. Rise, and you are free. Cheer thundered. Tears streaked ash-grimed cheeks. Somewhere bells still tolled, not of surrender now but of deliverance. Shae found Tyrion at dusk atop the parapet where Shadowmane rested, wing bandaged. She threw arms around him. Tyrion kissed her hair, inhaling smoke and jasmine. Below, Dothraki built cook fires, unsullied stacked confiscated wildfire to drown in the river. Dornish tents sprouted banners. He whispered, more to himself than her. It is done then. The rock falls with the crown. Done, she affirmed. Yet he felt weight heavier than chains, responsibility for tomorrow. Burning is easy, building is not. He watched Daenerys speak with city elders, offering grain, appointing Missandei to audit wells, Grey Worm to head city guard. The queen moved with same ferocity she wielded in battle, but tempered by compassion. A pang of awe colored Tyrion's chest, followed by dread that the realm could devour such hope. Shadowmane stirred, lowering snout beside him. Tyrion scratched a scale ridge. No rest for us, he murmured to dragon and woman alike. We hammer wheels into spokes of something better. In the distance, over smoldering roofs, bells chimed midnight. Not alarm this time, but promise. Endo. Ah. Ka. Ah. The bells tolled deep into the night, their bronze throats hoarse with exhaustion, yet still they sang. Across King's Landing, soot-smeared smallfolk stumbled from cellars and bolt-hole taverns, wide-eyed at the new shape of the sky, no longer scored by green wildfire jets or scorpion bolts, but instead streaked by drifting ash that glimmered white in moonlight. Children scooped it into cupped hands as though it were the season's first snow and marveled that it was warm to the touch, all that remained of 1,000 years of Lannister banners and Cersei's cruel promises. And high upon the red keep's gatehouse, Tyrion Lannister, wind-tossed hair plastered to his brow, listened to each peal roll like a tide through streets that once spat his name as curse. Shadowmane lay behind him on a slanted courtyard of fractured flagstones, a gargoyle come alive, wing bound tight in linen and maester's salve. The beast's breaths billowed foggy plumes. Every so often molten eyes half shuttered in dream, and a hiss escaped his fanged lips, as if even sleep could not quiet the echo of scorpion bolts. Tyrion kept a hand upon the dragon's warm neck, feeling tremors ripple beneath scale where tendons knit. He whispered nonsense to calm the creature. Half bawdy nursery rhyme, half Dothraki lullaby gleaned from the journey, and wondered whether any maester alive could mend bone as swiftly as dragon blood did. Below, the mud-brown flood of the Blackwater caught torchlight in sullen ripples. Rafts ferried unsullied squads from the southern bank, their ordered columns fanning across quays and warehouses that once stored wildfire for the Mad King's last stand. Now every barrel of Eris's relic was being heaved into the river under Grey Worm's unblinking gaze. What survived would be salted and sealed in lead coffer ships moored far upriver, beyond any would-be tyrant's grasp. Each splash drew a collective sigh from the city, as if, after decades of half-remembered terror, the memory itself could finally drown. Footsteps approached. Tyrion glanced back to see Maester Samwell Tarly, robes askew, links clinking, as he struggled up the blasted stairs from the library cloister. Sam bowed, pink and wheezing. "My lord, hand the fever tincture you ordered. Willow bark, comfrey, a dram of powdered obsidian." He held out a clay jar, cheeks puffed with pride and lingering fear in equal measure. Few men delivered tonics to dragons at arm's length. Tyrion accepted. "You brew faster than Pycelle ever farted, Maester Sam. My thanks." He knelt by Shadowmane's injured joint, uncorked the jar, and, on Sam's whispered instruction, poured viscous black-green salve into charred puncture where the bolt had grazed cartilage. The dragon twitched, but did not roar. Eyelids fluttered, nostrils steaming. Tyrion stroked his jaw ridge until the tremor eased. Sam watched, awestruck. "When I tended Lord Commander Snow's wolf at Castle Black, I never thought I'd... Well, dragons are bigger and marginally less housebroken," Tyrion said. "But I'll wager Ghost never melted a privy seat because he sneezed." He replaced the cork, rose stiffly, and handed Sam the jar. "Send word to the Queen the dragon will fly before moon's end. Tell her as well I recommend the city remain under dusk curfew until the wildfire barrels are gone. I've smelled enough charred flesh to haunt 10 lives." Sam departed, nearly tripping on him. Tyrion exhaled, the simple lift and fall of his shoulders only now revealing fatigue that had shadowed him since step 1 on Aegon's Hill. Hours of crisis left scant space for reflection, and reflection was dangerous. It exposed cracks that wine alone could not fill. He pressed 2 fingers to brow and felt the old saw of father wounds, a phantom ache no maester's salve would dull. Down among the keep's outer wards a horn blast sounded, 3 clear notes, the signal for returning patrols. Soon the battlements buzzed with new faces, Dothraki Co, as in black cloaks, Dornish spearmen in layered scarlet, Aryan free brothers of Tyrosh sporting half their weight in plume. A tapestry of wills barely stitched by trust in dragons and the woman who rode them. Trust that tomorrow's dawn would not peel back to reveal some sharper blade. The thought drew Tyrion toward stone stair that led inward to the Tower of the Hand. A temporary office had been installed there. Maps, coded ravens, drafts of decrees, until the Queen chose a permanent seat. He left Shadowmane dozing, and descended. Inside, candlelight cast flint-sharp shadows across carved walls. Scrolls lay in rolling drifts like snow dunes. Quills jutted from inkpots gone crusty. Wax seals imprinted with a new sigil, dragon over lion, cooled on a silver tray. Tyrion pushed aside charcoaled sketches of sewer blueprints and root cellars, his memory of the rock's secret guts, and sank onto a carved oaken stool procured by Missandei's efficiency earlier that day. A parchment sat waiting atop the pile like a crow among doves, its seal plain white. Bravosi velum. Tut. He slid it wearily, eyes skimming the precise Bravos glyphs. That with the lawful accession of Queen Daenerys of houses Targaryen and Lannister to the Iron Throne, outstanding notes of credit previously issued to the Crown of the Seven Kingdoms are formally transferred. Repayment schedule to resume quarter annually upon stabilization of royal mints, now held at Casterly Rock, Old Town, and Gulltown. Interest remains deferred for 1/2 year by the courtesy of the Iron Bank, conditional upon the well-being of all said mints. Failures of obligation will incur immediate remedy. Valar Morghulis. Nedin. Below, Tycho Nestoris' immaculate signature. Tyrion whistled. Half-year grace, magnanimous by the bank's glacial standards. A token, no doubt, of gratitude for the wildfire not boiling the city's bullion vaults. Or likely, the bank hedging until Daenerys proved she could keep a crown on her head longer than an autumn leaf. Still, 6 months was 6 months. Enough time to reopen gold veins in the Westerlands, to coax Myrish lenders with promises of tax haven, to audit Dorne's salt tax windfall. Or so he prayed. A rap at the door. Grey Worm entered clad in fresh-polished lorica, helm under arm. "My lord Hand," he said in clipped Westerosi. "The Queen summons you to the throne room. Prisoner statements readied." Tyrion rubbed temples. "If I must listen to Qyburn justify vivisection with medicinal zeal again, I'll have him quartered." Grey Worm permitted the faintest ghost of amusement. "Queen prefers heads intact. Easier to mount on spikes." Mender one. They trod coiled corridors until hall opened into the remnants of Maegor's throne chamber. Walls scorched black, columns cracked by dragonfire, yet the Iron Throne itself stood curiously unmarked, as though swords within recognized Targaryen heat and shrugged it off. Daenerys waited upon its first step, clad not in conquest plate, but a plain dark dress lined with pale fur at throat and cuffs, echo of northern snows she had once dreamed of conquering. Beside her, Missandei held a ledger. Varys, quill at ready, perched like some patient owl. Nearest the doors knelt 3 prisoners in chains. Qyburn, gaunt and bloodless. Sir Giles Rosby, late acting hand under Cersei, and Cersei Lannister herself, bound wrists, yet head still tilted proud, golden hair disheveled but defiant. Jaime stood behind her with 4 unsullied, sword unsheathed. Tyrion's heart stuttered at the sight of his sister. Only candles separated them, yet an abyss yawned wide as any. Memories raced. Child Tyrion chasing her in lion-red gardens, she laughing as she poured perfume on his tunic. Older Cersei telling father that dwarfs belonged beneath dungeons. Queen Cersei spitting at him across a council table. All of it collapsed into this ragged woman, whose eyes still smoldered but were ringed with sleepless bruise. He took his place at Daenerys' right. She addressed the court in Valyrian first, then the common tongue. Justice must be swift and seen, so the realm heals. She gestured to Missandei, who called each indictment treason, kinslaying, mass murder by wildfire. Cersei's reply cut the air. The realm needs a spine, not beggars from across the narrow sea. She hawked phlegm at the floor before Tyrion's boots. "You will never rule them, little brother. They'll fear the dragons until they vanish again. Then you'll die choking on their silence." Daenerys' gaze never flickered. "I offer you mercy of the wall. Take black. Live out days in ice, far from politics." Cersei laughed, raw and brittle. "You think I'll freeze while you swan in my halls? I bore 3 children there, Her breath hitched. "Children, ... 2 dead, 1 hidden away beyond these walls." Tears and rage warred, but tears lost. "Burn me," she snarled. I will make a prettier pyre than that wretched green girl you lost." The insult sliced Tyrion's remaining restraint. He stepped forward. "Your reign ended tonight, sister. The small folk dance in charred streets because for the first time in their misbegotten lives, the sky does not promise green hellfire at dawn. You speak of spines. Yours bent long ago." He turned to Daenerys, voice soft. "I recommend the wall, your grace. Not for mercy's sake, but to give history a vantage from which to watch her grandeur rot." "Thou." Daenerys nodded slowly. "So be it. To Grey Worm," she said. "Escort Queen Cersei Lannister. To Black Sails Gallas. She sails at dawn for Eastwatch." Cersei trembled, shocked by mercy sharper than flame. She glared at Tyrion. "I will remember." "You always did dwell on trifles," he replied. Qyburn next. Daenerys offered chainsmith service at the Citadel's darkest tower. Maester Conspirator refused, citing duty to knowledge. Drogon settled argument with one flicker of heat that melted the irons from Qyburn's wrists and seared flesh beneath. He shrieked. Tyrion suppressed vomit. The queen sentenced him to lifelong sanitarium cell under Samwell's oversight. Books but no corpses. Sir Giles wept for pardon, claiming he'd only obeyed. Jaime confirmed cowardice rather than malice. Daenerys consigned him to counting coins in the new royal treasury, a punishment fit for a man whose greatest crime was complacency. When the hall emptied, Tyrion lingered with Daenerys. Candle pools danced amber on her cheeks, exhaustion drawn tight around eyes that had seen too many gates fall. "Will they accept?" she asked quietly. "Of realm, nobles, coin-keepers. They will test," he said. "But gold and grain silence doubters. And dragons." A pleasant argument. She studied the throne's iron tangles. "I looked upon this chair from horseback. It seemed larger then. Power often shrinks under scrutiny," Tyrion mused. "Best not scrutinize too long." She almost smiled, then rubbed fingers along fur cuff. "The north remains uncertain. Sansa Stark fortified Winterfell. Jon Snow disappeared beyond Shadow Tower. His ravens speak of whites stirring anew in abandoned forts. The Starks may bend knee if I wed a northern lord." Her gaze searched Tyrion's face, half teasing. "You volunteered once." "Alas, I have an inconvenient mistress," he said, thinking of Shae. "And I suspect Lady Sansa might prefer a consort whose head brushes higher than her stocking tops." Daenerys chuckled faintly. "True." She sobered. "But I need a warden there who will neither rebel once dragons depart, nor starve small folk with levies." "Perhaps ask Sansa whom she trusts," Tyrion suggested. "Trust is coin rarer than gold beyond the neck." She nodded. "Tomorrow. For tonight, rest. The realm will still reel at dawn." He bowed, then climbed stairs toward guest chambers, once reserved for Targaryen princes. Shae waited within, lamplight glinting off copper basin where she soaked ragged hands. On table sat 2 goblets, and a dusty skin of Dornish red pilfered from royal cellar before wildfire consumed half the racks. She poured as he entered, eyes tracing dark half-moons under his own. "No blood on you?" she asked. "Only what memory spills." He shed cloak, boots, sank beside her on rough-hewn bench. The wine tasted of summer figs and sandalwood. After second swallow, he told her of Cersei's fate. Shae's shoulders unclenched. She had feared Queen's spite too long. "What of us?" she whispered. "No gallows wait, but cities chew lovers. I watched Meereen swallow women I thought fearless." Tyrion set goblet aside. He reached into tunic, withdrew a ring of hammered silver, set with garnet the shade of Shyfeather's hatch shell. A trinket Dothraki smith had cast at sea upon Shyfeather's 10th moon. He captured her hand. "Use is all I refuse to gamble. Marry me here tomorrow's dawn. Before bankers or maesters contrive reasons why not." Her eyes widened. Tears slicked lashes, but did not fall. She kissed him hard enough the bench creaked. "Yes," she breathed. 7 times yes. They moved to bed of damask older than the conquest, and for a time bells and dragons faded to distant thunder. In that hush, He almost believed Terence remained locked outside the chamber door. But dawn cracked too soon. And then? His wedding dawn unfolded upon balustrade overlooking the newly christened Dragon's Square, where scaffolds had sprung overnight to mend wildfire-scorched statues. Nisande officiated the Valyrian rites. Daenerys insisted the couple choose, and Grey Worm served as witness, bareheaded, a look of serene confusion at human mating rituals. Varys presented rings because, he said, "I am fond of circular things, none more so than secrets forever binding." The ceremony was swift, binding of wrists in crimson silk, recitations of old Valyrian vows. Tyrion cursed his accent through, final blessing invoked by Shyfeather's triumphant cry as he swooped above. Street crowds roared approval. A dwarf prince wedding a low-born lover, folk smelled romance like sweet rolls. And a stable romance promised stability, something the realm craved more than bread. Feasting followed in ruins of the Queen's ballroom, a roofless space where ivy draped cracked marble. Soldiers and smallfolk mingled at trestles, while minstrels fused Dornish drum with Rhoynar flute and Dothraki lute borrowed from far seas. Daenerys danced once with Grey Worm, once with Missandei, once. Hesitant but heartfelt, with Jaime Lannister, whose tentative smiles to her dragons showed fences mending. But midday, ravens cut the revel short. One scroll bore direwolf's seal, a message from Sansa Stark. Snow has vanished beyond wall. Dead things move in shiverwood. I recall your words about wheels. Yet winter cares nothing for wheels. Send aid or prepare to meet broken oaths in cold. Nanro. Attached, a withered black rose petal, symbol of night's watch obsequy. Daenerys read aloud in council. Tyrion leaned over map where cartographers marked wildling villages now. If whites roam again, north will bow to any who burns them. Politic and mercy align. Varys interjected. Your grace, half the realm yet plots your toppling. Marching dragons to the wall leaves crown lands exposed. I trust Tyrion can keep them honest, Daenerys replied. I will ride north with Drogon Rhaegal and half the Unsullied. Tyrion will govern as hand in my stead. A hush settled, broken only by scratch of Rada parchment. Tyrion felt weightland full upon shoulders, rule a realm fractured by famine and fresh conquerors, while Queen contested dead. But he nodded. I shall make the lion roar softly, he said, forcing wryness. Preparations commenced faster than wildfire burn. Grain caravans diverted to King's Road, maesters conscripted for plague watch. Surviving gold cloaks retrained under Grey Worm's doctrine. Shay oversaw orphans' soup kitchens, coaxing coin from Taroshi captains who feared local riots worse than tax. Shadowmane healed, though wing membrane scarred in constellations of black glass. He would fly again, Tyrion told stewards, but only to Circle City until fully sound. 3 mornings later, the northern host departed. Daenerys astride Drogon soared north by northeast beyond Maiden's whirlwinds. Behind thundered the unsullied vanguard, Dothraki outriders, Rhaegal carrying Kinvara and a crate of obsidian lamps fed by dragonglass candles. Snow clouds gathered like wolves. Tyrion watched from battlements, heart tugged by awe and dread. Winter will envy that fire, he murmured. He set to work. First, he reopened the great granaries near River Row. Lannister vault keys lay on his belt. Sacks of barley from Reach harvests, which Cersei once hoarded, now lined Baker Rows. Ration tokens fell away to open markets. Bakers resumed bread size fit for human stomachs. Small folk cheered. Second, he grounded all scorpion manufacture, melting iron stock into plowshares and city gate braces. If we trust dragons, we needn't fear them, he declared. Gibbets once used for dissenters now held baskets of apples for street urchins. Symbolic reversal that scribes gushed over. Third, he corresponded with the Iron Bank, requesting artisans to evaluate Crowland silver mines for pooled venture. Teco Nestoris hailed the transparency and dispatched auditors. Coins soon flowed. But not all accepted new rule. 6 weeks into regency, smoke columns rose from Crackclaw Point. House Brune, ever half bent to dragons, but wholly loyal to their own. Sheltered mercenaries calling themselves Sons of the Red Lion, Cersei loyalists, refusing North's ascendancy. When Raven brought word they'd seized salt works and butchered city tacksmen, Tyrion shuttered counsel and donned travel cloak. Atop Shadowmane, healed enough for battle but still stiff at high climb, he flew east with 100 Dornish spears by sea galley. Crack-claws bogs sucked at hooves. Bandits fell back to timber palisade. They spat curses at the dwarf, brandished barbed spears. When arrow felled a Dornish scout, Tyrion's temper broke. He commanded Shadowmane to wheel overhead just once. Dragonfire spread across palisade in sheets, sparing the keep stone heart, but devouring every wooden rampart. Yet he forbade second strike. Then he rode forth under white banner, offering amnesty if they knelt. Half did. The rest fled into bogs. They never thrived again. He left a garrison of Brune loyalists and a new sept carved from charstone, to remind them mercy could be as permanent as ash. Trouble sprouted elsewhere. Ironborn reavers tested fair seas again, sacking Shield Islands. This time, Tyrion leveraged Yonkai's Yellow Fleet, renamed Dawn's Teeth, stationed in Fair Isle Harbor. Barely had the reavers anchored when a pair of cog hulks rammed their flagship, Marines boarding under Lannister dragon banners. Reavers fled, their sails aflame behind them. Dashara of Volantis, Dawn's Teeth's commodore, sent Tyrion the captured Kraken banners as token. Still, every triumph doubled expectation. Letters poured in, a cobbler petitioning for cobblestone funds, a Lysine envoy demanding toll exemptions, a manticore breeder in Karth requesting license for exotic guard beasts. Tyrion trudged by immediacy of harm. The breeder's letter he fed to Brazier. Nights, he and Shae walked the godswood, stunted but blooming red again where wildfire once scorched heart tree roots. She tracked stars, guessing where Daenerys' northern camp might be by constellation shift. He read her reports. Unscheduled snowfall near Moat Cailin, supply wagons delayed by undead raiders, Jon Snow's direwolf spotted with wildling scouts beyond Last Hearth. They prayed softly to old gods they hardly knew. Then, on the 17th night of Frostfall, a raven arrived, bearing silk ribbon charred at ends. It carried but 4 words. Storm at the wall. Then shall. Beneath sigil, a dragon's claw scorched into parchment, the queen's mark used only in greatest peril. Tyrion's blood cooled. He called immediate council. Varys by lantern, Grey Worm armored within minutes, Sam with weather charts. Rhaegal, they deduced, could outrun any messenger. If Daenerys bothered with Raven, battle raged long enough to require southern reinforcements. Shadowmane bristled on parapet, sensing tension. Tyrion stroked scarred neck. We fly north, he told Grey Worm. AT first light. Shae grabbed his sleeve. Your seat belongs to the realm more than me, he said, voice firm. He named Missandei regent pro tem, with Varys and Sam as advisors. Dawn's Teeth would patrol Blackwater. Dornish spears hold city gates. Yunkai Marines board scorpions perched on towers just in case. All sealed in writ, dragon wax, melted to black-red stamp. At sunrise, King's Landing stirred to thunder of wings. Shyfeather, now broad as a war galley's sail, joined Shadowmane, the younger's triumphant bugle echoing off marble. Streets filled with faces turned upward. Children cheering, old men crossing hearts, mothers holding infants to bless them with luck. Tyrion felt weight, but also lift. City trusted him to ride into storm and return with dawn. They soared across Crownlands, over Roserway dusted by first frost. By midday they sighted King's Road, armies marching south bearing broken sigils of undead wildlings. They looked like ants from sky, but the stench of decay rose even to dragon height. Shyfeather dove once. Scorching path. The dead splintered. He learned the burn that day. Tyrion later mused. The measured burst that consumed bone but spared soil. On second dawn, wall rose ahead, now a jagged ruin of blue-white shards, where an avalanche of sorcery had smashed its central span. Dothraki outriders galloped along shattered ice footings, corralling whites toward northern pines. Unsullied phalanxes anchored gaps, shields frost-rimmed. And at the center, atop a plateau once the fist of the first men, Drogon fought two undead ice worms, beasts of ragged flesh and rime-crusted horns. Rhaegal circled, flame sputtering, white frost extinguishing green-gold breath. Daenerys stood astride Drogon's neck, hair wild silver, wielding a spear of dragonglass bound to starlight steel. Every thrust turned undead hide to vapor. Yet worms struck too. Tail spikes of frozen chitin clanged off Drogon's scales. Each blow hissed steam. Tyrion urged Shadowmane lower. The air stabbed lungs. He recalled briefing. Whites resisted ordinary flame, but dragonglass unlocked their spells. He drew the dagger Sam forged, Valyrian steel core with dragonglass shards knapped along edge. Holding it aloft, he shouted Old Valyrian, spurring Shadowmane into the fray. An ice worm lunged at Rhaegal's flank. Shyfeather intercepted, smaller body ramming jaw hinge. The clash rang like cracked bells. Worm pivoted to swallow him whole. Shyfeather spat flame. Blue ichor hissed, but skin held. Tyrion screamed command. Strike the joint. Shadowmane swooped, Tyrion leaning. Dagger raised. They sped under Worm's arching neck. He slashed where bone met frozen sinew. Dragonglass bit, releasing a shriek of wind so cold, it crystallized tears on his lashes. The neck split like shattered river ice, black ichor geysered. Worm shuddered, then collapsed, avalanche of limbs. Rhaegal seized chance, incinerated fallen mass before necromancy could stitch it anew. The second worm turned on Tyrion, eyes twin pits of midnight. Its jaws yawned wider than Watchtower Gate, chilled mist gusting. Shadowmane rolled, but frost breath grazed left wing. Scale turned brittle. Flight wobbled. Tyrion's stomach lurched. Below, unsullied lines faltered as new wave of whites poured from gaps. If Worm broke through, rout would follow. Drogon streaked in, Daenerys at helm. She vaulted from saddle as he slammed Worm's ribs with claw. Mid-air she hurled her spear. Dragonglass tip pierced creature's skull between horns. A thunderclap of shattering ice cracked valley. Worm's head exploded into snow dust, body convulsing before toppling. The battlefield hushed, as if even wind respected the kill. Whites collapsed en masse, puppets severed from strings. Silence rolled outward, settling with falling flakes. Tyrion dismounted onto frost-flattened moss, knees buckling. Daenerys strode to him, spear dripping ichor that hissed on snow. He managed a grin of ragged relief. She answered with a weary smile, then pulled him into embrace. "You came?" she whispered. "Late, as usual. But I bring my own fireworks." He glanced upward. Shyfeather circled triumphant. Shadowmane limped to land, wings stiff but intact. Jon Snow approached, hair rimed with frost, eyes ancient with fatigue. He nodded to Tyrion, then to Daenerys. "The breach is sealed for now, but the spell that birthed them gnaws still. We must burn every shard." Weeks followed of grim labor. Obsidian blades felled pockets of undead in shiverwood. Dothraki burned corpse mounds. Sam scoured ancient texts and castle blacks, surviving tower, drafting rites to bind walls magic anew. And Tyrion forged treaties. Wildling clans granted valley farms under northern stewardship. The Night's Watch renamed the Black Guard, sworn not to exile but to vigilance. Dragonglass mines in Skagos leased jointly to Crown and North. At last, under auroras that rippled pink and violet above ghostly snows, Daenerys called parley on hill, overlooking rebuild site. Sansa Stark joined, hair like sunset flame and torchlight, furs heavy. Beside her stood Arya, silent direwolf shadows in her eyes, and Bran slimmer, with gaze that pierced time. They debated banners and homage. Tyrion spoke seldom, letting northerners weigh their scars against Queen's deeds. In the end, Bran's voice settled matter. Bend knee not to dragon, but to dawn. Together only may we survive the next darkness. And so the North knelt, not with fanfare, but solemn vow at cairn of those lost. And years later, bards would call that meeting the Dawn Pact. Few sang of treaties or interest rates or sewer repairs. But Tyrion remembered every cracked quill, every sleepless night drafting tax code that spared grain for fishermen, every tear Shay wiped from orphan cheek. He watched dragons grow, watched children climb their ridged backs in royal yard, watched Daenerys' hair thread with first strands of gray as she sparred with Jon beneath cherry blossoms planted along the Red Keep's repaired walls. One dusk, 10 years after the bells of surrender, Tyrion stood on tower balcony once again. Below, festival torches glittered on the Blackwater where barges celebrated Treaty of the Isles, with firelit pageant. Shay joined him, leaning into crook of his arm. The sky above thrummed. Shadowmane, vast and slow like a drifting island, escorted by Shyfeather and 2 new hatchlings, bronze and blue, whose shells had cracked one gentle summer under the godswood's canopy. Tyrion raised goblet of autumn arbor gold. To wheels reforged, he toasted softly. Shay clinked. To fire wisely spent. And for once, the dwarf who had once crawled tunnels of Casterly rock felt no phantom ache of rejection, no trembling fear of scorn yet to come. Only wind in his curls, warmth of a realm repairing itself day by day, and above it all, the measured beat of dragon wings curling clouds into new constellations.